The experiment gone wrong. The massive lecture hall of the Quantum Defense Academy hummed with nervous energy as 200 students from across the galaxy settled into their seats. Dr. Elena Rodriguez adjusted her data tablet and glanced around, at the incredible diversity surrounding her. Crystalline beings from the Vega system chimed softly to each other, their translucent bodies refracting the chamber's blue lighting into rainbow patterns. Massive, armored Corvathians stomped heavily down the aisles, each step echoing through the amphitheater. Gas-form ethereals floated near the ceiling, their cloudy bodies shifting colors based on their emotional states. Elena had dreamed of this moment since childhood. As one of only 12 humans accepted into the Academy's Xenobiology program, she represented her entire species in this prestigious institution. Earth had joined the Galactic Alliance just 3 years ago, making humans the newest members of a confederation that spanned thousands of worlds. Commander Jake Thompson, her fellow human and tactical training instructor, sat in the faculty section wearing his crisp academy uniform. His weathered face bore the scars of countless missions across hostile worlds, but his warm brown eyes always held a hint of humor that put others at ease. Jake had been instrumental in getting the human exchange program approved, arguing that Earth's military expertise could benefit the Alliance. At the front of the hall, Professor Zektar activated the massive holographic display. The reptilian being's scales shifted from deep green to an authoritative silver as he addressed the assembly. His species, the Draconian Confederacy, had founded the Academy over 2 centuries ago after their homeworld was devastated by an invasion of shadowhounds. Today's demonstration will showcase the apex predatory instincts of juvenile shadowhound specimens, Zektar announced, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. These creatures represent the most dangerous pack hunters in known space. Even their young possess killing instincts that have wiped out entire colonies. Elena felt her stomach tighten. She had read about shadowhounds in her xenobiology texts. Native to the dark side of tidally locked worlds, they hunted in coordinated packs with supernatural intelligence. Their adult forms stood nearly 7 feet tall, with razor-sharp claws that could slice through titanium hull plating. But it was their pack mentality that made them truly terrifying. They could coordinate attacks across vast distances, communicate through subsonic frequencies, and adapt their hunting strategies in real time. The specimens we will observe today are only 4 months old, Professor Zektar continued, his yellow eyes scanning the nervous crowd. Already they demonstrate the neural pathways that will make them unstoppable killers within 2 standard years. Captain Mira Santos, leader of the Human Exchange Program, shifted uncomfortably in her seat near Elena. The former Earth Navy officer had seen combat across 3 star systems, but even she looked tense. Her weathered hands gripped the armrests of her chair as she watched the professor manipulate the containment field controls. The holographic display showed the interior of a specialized containment chamber beneath the lecture hall. 6 small dark shapes moved in the shadows, their forms barely visible against the blackened walls. Occasionally, glowing red eyes would catch the light, creating an ominous effect that sent ripples of unease through the student body. Observe the containment protocols. Zektar gestured to the complex array of force fields and energy barriers. Triple redundant systems ensure complete safety during observation. The field generators maintain a Class A containment rating, sufficient to hold adult specimens. Elena noticed that several alien species had begun exhibiting stress responses. The ethereals were cycling through darker color patterns, while the Corvathians' armor plates had locked into defensive positions. Even the usually confident Xentorian cadets with their superior telepathic abilities seemed agitated. Jake caught Elena's eye and offered a reassuring nod. Throughout their time at the Academy, the human contingent had faced constant reminders of their species' perceived weaknesses. Humans lacked the natural armor of Corvathians, the energy manipulation abilities of Xentorians, or the hive mind coordination of the vegan collective. What they brought to the galactic community remained unclear to most alien species. The demonstration will begin with basic behavioral analysis, Professor Zektar announced. You will witness how these juveniles assess threats, establish pack hierarchy, and identify optimal prey selection. The containment field shimmered and began to descend. Elena held her breath as the first glimpse of the shadowhound cubs became visible. They were smaller than she had expected, roughly the size of large earth dogs, but their proportions spoke of barely contained lethality. Midnight black fur covered lean, muscled bodies built for speed and agility. 6 legs distributed there, weight perfectly for impossible leaps and direction changes. Most unsettling were their eyes, 4 per cub, glowing with an intelligence that seemed far too advanced for their age. The cubs emerged from their chamber with fluid grace, moving as a perfectly coordinated unit. Their heads swept back and forth, analyzing the massive lecture hall with predatory calculation. Students throughout the amphitheater pressed back in their seats instinctively, ancient survival instincts triggering despite the supposed safety of their elevated positions. "Notice their immediate environmental assessment," Zektar narrated, seemingly oblivious to his students' discomfort. "Within seconds, they have cataloged every potential threat and escape route. Now watch as they identify the weakest prey targets." But something unexpected happened. Instead of spreading out to analyze different sections of the audience, all 6 cubs focused on the same area of the lecture hall. Their multiple eyes locked onto the human section with laser-like intensity. Elena felt her heart begin racing as she realized what was happening. The cubs had identified the humans as their primary targets, just as every xenobiology textbook had predicted. Humans registered on every known predator-prey matrix as optimal hunting targets. They lacked natural defenses, enhanced senses, or toxic secretions that might deter attack. "Fascinating," Professor Zektar muttered, consulting his instruments. "They have immediately identified the optimal prey selection. Textbook behavior, really." The cubs began moving toward the human section with purpose, their 6-legged gait carrying them up the tiered seating with impossible agility. Other students scrambled to get out of their path, creating a clear corridor directly toward Elena, Jake, and Captain Santos. Everyone remained calm. Jake's voice carried across the hall with military authority. "Do not make sudden movements." But Elena noticed something strange in the cubs' approach. Their body language seemed wrong for a hunting pack. Their ears were forward rather than pinned back. Their tails held high instead of low. Most puzzling of all, they were making soft, chittering sounds rather than the bone-chilling growls shadowhounds were famous for. The lead cub reached Elena's row first. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, as the creature approached. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she had learned to trust her observations over her fears during her xenobiology training. The cub stopped directly in front of her and did something that made the entire lecture hall gasp in collective shock. It sat down and tilted its head, regarding her with what could only be described as curiosity rather than hunger. "This is impossible." Professor Zektar's voice cracked with disbelief. "Shadowhounds do not exhibit exploratory behavior toward prey species. They attack immediately upon identification." The second cub had reached Jake's position. The grizzled commander watched calmly as the creature circled his chair once, sniffing the air. Then, to everyone's amazement, the cub lay down at Jake's feet and began making a deep rumbling sound that resonated through the sudden silence of the hall. "Are they purring?" Captain Santos whispered incredulously as the third cub approached her with the same non-aggressive posture. "Shadowhounds do not purr," Zektar stammered, frantically checking his instruments. "They do not make contentment sounds, they kill." Elena slowly extended her hand toward the cub in front of her. The creature sniffed her fingers, then gently pressed its head against her palm. The contact sent a wave of warmth through her, not just physical, but something deeper. She began stroking the incredibly soft fur, and the cub's rumbling intensified, joined by its siblings. "Their neural pattern is completely altered," Zektar announced, staring at his readings in confusion. "Stress hormones have disappeared. Aggression indicators are at 0. They are displaying attachment behaviors I have never seen in this species." The remaining 3 cubs had distributed themselves among the other humans in the section, each exhibiting the same peaceful, almost affectionate behavior. They seemed drawn not just to the human's physical presence, but to something deeper. Jake looked up at the astonished faces surrounding them. Maybe they sense something different about us, he said quietly. Something that doesn't register on your instruments. Elena continued stroking the cub beside her, marveling at how its fearsome reputation melted away in the face of its gentle behavior. What if they're not seeing us as prey? She suggested. What if they're seeing us as something else entirely? Professor Zektar descended from his lectern, approaching cautiously with a portable scanner. No pheromone emissions detected, no unusual electromagnetic signatures. By every scientific measure, you should be optimal prey targets. Captain Santos looked around at her fellow humans, each now surrounded by contentedly rumbling shadowhound cubs. Maybe that's exactly the point, Professor. Maybe it's not about what we have that they can detect. Maybe it's about what we don't have. Explain, Zektar demanded, though his tone had shifted from academic authority to genuine curiosity. Elena met the cub's 4 eyes, seeing intelligence there but also something she recognized from her work with Earth animals. We don't have predator instincts, she said softly. We don't trigger their fight or flight responses because we're not competing with them. We're just present, calm. Maybe they can sense that we mean no harm. The lecture hall remained silent except for the rumbling contentment of 6 of the galaxy's most dangerous predators, now completely relaxed in human company. The implications of what they were witnessing would soon reshape everything the galaxy thought it knew about both species. The discovery that changed everything. The emergency council meeting convened within an hour of the incident. Representatives from 12 different species crowded into the Academy's secure briefing chamber, their various forms of agitation filling the air with a cacophony of clicks, chimes, and electromagnetic pulses. At the center of the table, a holographic display showed the ongoing phenomenon. 6 shadowhound cubs still contentedly resting with their human companions in a specially monitored observation room. Director General Korth-Ax of the Galactic Defense Council paced the chamber with his 4 massive legs, his insectoid frame trembling with barely contained anxiety. This cannot be allowed to continue, he declared, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's emergency lighting. We have protocols, containment procedures. The safety of the Academy is paramount. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat at the human delegation table, her tablet displaying real-time biometric data from both species. With respect, Director General, the cubs show no signs of aggression. Their stress hormones have remained at baseline levels for the past 3 hours. They appear to be experiencing what can only be classified as contentment. Contentment, the crystalline vegan representative chimed with sharp harmonics of disbelief. Shadowhounds do not experience contentment except after successful kills. Your data must be corrupted. Professor Zektar entered the chamber carrying armloads of scanning equipment, his usually immaculate scales disheveled with excitement. The data is accurate, he announced, his voice cracking with scientific fervor. I have run every biological and chemical analysis in our database. The cubs are exhibiting neurochemical patterns completely unknown in their species. Commander. Jake Thompson leaned forward in his chair, his weathered hands folded calmly despite the chaos surrounding them. Maybe we should consider that there's something about human neural patterns they find appealing rather than threatening. Captain Mira Santos nodded in agreement. Throughout Earth's history, humans have had unique relationships with predator species. We domesticated wolves into dogs, formed bonds with large cats, even established cooperative relationships with marine predators. Perhaps this is just an extension of that capability. Director General Korth-Ax's mandibles clicked rapidly with agitation. You are suggesting that humans possess some form of natural empathy that extends across species barriers? That is scientifically impossible. Empathy requires shared evolutionary history, common neural architecture. Actually, Elena interrupted, pulling up her research data. Our preliminary scans show something remarkable. When the cubs approach humans, both species exhibit synchronized brainwave patterns in the theta frequency range. It's similar to what we observe in human parent-child bonding, but it's happening across completely different evolutionary lines. The chamber erupted in a dozen different forms of skeptical communication. The gas-form ethereal representative shifted through several color phases of disbelief, while the Corvathian delegates' armor plates rattled with dismissive noise. "Show us," commanded High Researcher Veltar of the Draconian Science Ministry, her ancient voice carrying the weight of centuries. "If humans truly possess this capability, demonstrate it under controlled conditions." 2 hours later, the Academy's main laboratory had been converted into an observation theater. Behind reinforced transparent aluminum barriers, Elena found herself in a sterile white chamber with a single adult shadowhound. Unlike the cubs, this creature stood nearly 7 feet tall, its midnight fur seeming to absorb light around it. 4 glowing red eyes tracked her every movement with predatory intelligence that made her survival instincts scream warnings. "The adult specimen is fully mature." Professor Zektar's voice came through the intercom system. "It has been captured from the wild only 3 days ago and has already killed 2 automated feeding drones. By every measurement, you are in mortal danger." Elena could feel her heart pounding, but she forced herself to remain calm. Through the observation windows, she could see dozens of alien scientists monitoring every conceivable measurement. Jake stood at the control panel, his hand hovering over the emergency containment activation switch. "Remember," Jake's voice crackled through her earpiece, "you don't have to prove anything to anyone, just be yourself." Elena took a deep breath and sat down cross-legged in the center of the chamber. The adult shadowhound circled her slowly, its 6 legs carrying it with fluid grace around the perimeter of the room. She could feel its 4 eyes boring into her, analyzing, calculating, deciding. "Neural patterns are spiking," Professor Zektar announced tensely. "The specimen is evaluating attack vectors." But Elena noticed something the instruments couldn't measure. The creature's circling was growing smaller, bringing it gradually closer to her position. Its ears were forward rather than pinned back. Most significantly, it wasn't making any of the bone-chilling vocalizations shadowhounds were famous for. "Talk to me," she whispered, not to the scientists watching but to the creature itself. "What do you see when you look at me?" The shadowhound stopped circling. For several heartbeats it stood perfectly still, all 4 eyes fixed on Elena's face. Then, moving with surprising gentleness for such a massive predator, it lay down just beyond arm's reach. "Impossible readings," Zektar's voice had risen to an excited pitch. "Stress hormones dropping rapidly, aggression indicators falling to 0. It's exhibiting the same neurochemical changes we observed in the cubs." Elena slowly extended her hand. The adult shadowhound sniffed her fingers, then pressed its massive head against her palm just as the cubs had done. The contact sent waves of warmth through both beings, a connection that transcended species barriers. "The neural synchronization is even stronger with the adult specimen," Elena heard Zektar announce to the observation room. "Both species are producing identical theta wave patterns. They are essentially sharing emotional states." High Researcher Veltar's ancient voice crackled through the intercom with awe. "In 300 years of xenobiological study, I have never witnessed interspecies bonding of this magnitude. How is this possible?" Captain Santos spoke from the observation deck. "Because humans evolved as social creatures who formed communities, not just with our own species, but with any creature that showed the capacity for emotional connection. We don't see predators and prey. We see potential friends." Jake added, "Our survival strategy was never about being the strongest or fastest. It was about building relationships, creating trust, finding common ground even with those who seemed completely different from us." Elena continued stroking the massive creature's fur, marveling at how something so fearsome could become so gentle in the presence of genuine care. "They're not monsters," she said softly. "They're just lonely. Their species hunts in packs because they need connection, community, belonging. When they encounter humans, they sense something they've been searching for." Director General Korth Axe's voice came through the speakers, trembling with implications he was only beginning to understand. "If humans can form these bonds with shadowhounds, the most dangerous predators in known space, what other supposedly hostile species might respond to human contact?" Professor Zektar was frantically taking readings, his excitement barely contained. The potential applications are staggering. Diplomatic missions to hostile worlds, peacekeeping operations with aggressive species, rehabilitation of captured predator specimens. Humans could serve as interspecies ambassadors throughout the galaxy. Over the following weeks, the Academy became a hub of revolutionary research. Elena worked with teams of alien scientists to document the bonding process, while Jake developed new training protocols for interspecies contact. The 6 cubs became permanent residents of the Academy, serving as both research subjects and therapy animals for stressed students from across the galaxy. Captain Santos found herself appointed as the new director of interspecies relations, tasked with developing programs that would utilize humanity's unique empathetic abilities. The Galactic Alliance Council voted unanimously to establish the first human-led diplomatic corps, recognizing that Earth's newest members brought something to the galactic community that had been missing for millennia. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed strength itself. The massive Corvathians, who had always prided themselves on their armored might, began requesting human advisors for their military units. The telepathic Xentorians, masters of mental manipulation, sought human teachers to learn about emotional intelligence. Even the ancient Draconian Confederacy acknowledged that power meant nothing without the wisdom to use it compassionately. Elena stood in the Academy's observation deck 3 months later, watching human students work alongside alien classmates in ways that would have been impossible before the Shadowhound incident. Below in the courtyard, Jake led a mixed-species tactical team through training exercises, while 6 Shadowhound cubs played nearby, their presence now a source of comfort rather than fear. "You know what the most remarkable thing is?" Elena said, to Captain Santos, who had joined her at the viewing window. "What's that?" "We didn't change them," Elena smiled, watching a Corvathian student cautiously pet one of the cubs. "We just showed them that being strong doesn't mean being alone, that the greatest predators in the galaxy still need the same thing every living being needs: to be understood, to be accepted, to belong somewhere." Captain Santos nodded, watching their fellow humans bridge gaps between species that had existed for thousands of years. Maybe that's what Earth brings to the galaxy. Not superior technology or military might, but the simple recognition that we're all more alike than different, regardless of how many eyes or legs we have. The Academy's evening chimes echoed across the campus, calling students to dinner. As representatives from dozens of worlds gathered in the Great Hall, many accompanied by human mentors who had helped them overcome ancient prejudices and fears, Elena realized that humanity's greatest strength had always been hidden in plain sight. It wasn't their ability to fight or build or conquer. It was their ability to see potential friends in everyone they met, even in the most unlikely places. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time since joining the Galactic Alliance, Elena was certain that was exactly as it should be.